When I came to my sister's wedding, my brother loudly asked if I still lived in that stinky shelter for sad sick girls. My aunt spit out her drink laughing. I just smiled. That shelter gave me everything I needed to build what I launched this morning. Now they're screaming, "You're kiss." I'm Raylene, 36 female. My brother mocked me at my sister's wedding in front of over 150 people, calling me out for still living in that stinky shelter for sad sick girls. My aunt laughed so hard she choked on her mimosa. I just smiled. Because what they didn't know was that I launched something that very morning that would ruin them, and I didn't have to lift a single finger to do it. Now they're screaming, "You're killing us," but the truth is, they did it to themselves. I just gave them the spotlight they always seem to crave. And I didn't come from a warm family. Not abusive in the textbook sense, nobody left visible bruises or locked anyone in closets, but the kind of cold, critical family that makes you doubt your value before you even know what self-worth is. We were from Hudson, New York, this river town that pretended to be quaint, but under the surface, it was just like our family, glossy on the outside, rotting underneath. I was the middle child. Older brother, Curtis. Younger sister, Melody. The golden girl and the golden boy. I was just the weird one. I liked books. I liked silence. I liked asking questions. Apparently, that meant I was a problem. Curtis was the type to charm teachers and trip you on the way to the bus. Melody was sweet but calculated, she knew how to please our parents without lifting a finger. Me? I stayed in my room, scribbling in my notebook or fiddling with an old laptop I found at a garage sale. Our parents, Wallace and Janice, were the kind who valued appearances over substance. My mom could bake a pie that looked straight out of Good Housekeeping, but she'd glare holes through your soul if you picked the wrong plate to eat it on. My dad was a quiet, distant man who drank more than he spoke and spent most of his free time complaining about the cost of everything and the laziness of everyone. By the time I was 19, I couldn't take it anymore. I fell for the first man who gave me attention. Dylan. At first, he was charming, funny, even protective. Within a year, that protection turned into isolation, and his charm turned into cruelty. You don't realize you're in a cage until you start trying to fly. I left him at 24, bruised, not just physically, but emotionally hollowed out. I had nowhere to go. No money. My own family told me to figure it out when I called crying from a payphone near Port Authority. That's how I ended up in Haven House. A women's shelter in Queens. It smelled like cleaning bleach and sadness. The mattresses were thin, the heating barely worked, and the hallway lights flickered like a horror movie. But it was the first place that felt like it didn't want anything from me except honesty. The woman who ran it, Inez, was in her 50s and had a heart big enough to fill the whole borough. She called me Nina, made sure I ate, and told me I wasn't broken. Just unshaped. I remember one night, I was fixing a busted Chromebook that one of the other women's kids had cracked. I was hunched over a cafeteria table, wires scattered everywhere, frustrated and cursing under my breath. Inez sat down across from me and said, "You ever think you were born to fix broken things? Maybe even yourself?" That moment stuck. I started taking classes. Low-cost community tech training programs in the Bronx. Coding, cybersecurity, systems management. I was quiet, dedicated, and smart in a way no one in my family ever cared to recognize. Within a year, I was interning at a data center. Within 2, freelancing. At first, it was small jobs, firewalls for schools, IT support for nonprofits. Then came bigger contracts, startup work, financial institutions. I was saving. Learning. Growing. My family didn't ask about me. And I didn't tell them anything. They liked to think of me as the cautionary tale. The girl who ran off with a loser and ended up in a shelter. The stinky shelter, as my brother would call it later. And then, I built something. Delia, a former social worker turned data analyst, became my business partner. We clicked immediately. She'd been in tech longer than me, but she said I had a brain that spoke machine. Together, we started Sentinel Veil, a cybersecurity startup aimed at providing protection for people who couldn't afford it, survivors, whistleblowers, nonprofits under attack, journalists. Real people. Real danger. We built something ethical. Powerful. Disruptive. By the time I turned 35, we had 12 employees, 4 major contracts with international organizations, and we were in talks with Amnesty International. Then we began work on Blackwell, our most advanced privacy software yet. It would use AI to identify unethical data collection, detect spyware, and block government surveillance in real time. Think of it like a digital shield for people with no army. We'd kept it quiet during beta. But the morning of my sister's wedding, we launched. The buzz was immediate. Vice picked it up. TechCrunch ran a full piece. Twitter, well, X now, was ablaze with speculation about how we pulled it off. And my family? They had no idea. Not even a clue. Which brings me to the wedding. Melody was marrying some guy named Trent, clean-shaven, career in real estate, parents with money. A textbook match. The wedding was being held at this vineyard near Kingston, and I almost didn't go. But something in me said I should. Not for them. For me. I showed up in a simple navy dress, no date, no fanfare. I was seated at the back, next to the loud uncle who always smelled like gin and old leather. It was fine. I didn't pay attention. But Curtis? He did. He spotted me near the drink table and called out across the entire reception hall. Well, if it isn't Queen Ray. What, you're still living in that stinky shelter for sad sick girls? Heads turned. My Aunt Darla let out a shrieking laugh and choked on her mimosa, spitting it into her napkin. Melody pretended not to hear. My mother just sipped her wine and adjusted her pearl necklace. And me? I smiled. That tight-lipped, calm, surgical kind of smile. No, Curtis, I said. That stinky shelter gave me everything I needed to build what I launched this morning. He blinked. What, a food blog? No, I said. Blackwell. I watched the color drain from his face. Because what Curtis didn't know was that my software had already flagged one of his companies during our beta testing. He was part of a shell corp collecting and selling user data from mental health apps. Specifically, apps targeting young women and survivors of trauma. Our system had detected massive privacy violations, including location tracking and unauthorized third-party selling to marketing firms and even health insurance providers. Curtis had built his little empire on exploitation. And I'd just exposed it. He didn't know that yet. But he would. That night. And the fallout? Would be beautiful. Curtis didn't say anything after that. He just stared at me, his mouth slightly open, like he was trying to place what I'd just said into a mental file that didn't exist for him. Blackwell meant nothing to him, yet. That was about to change. The rest of the reception blurred by. Melody was radiant, of course. She always was. She floated through the event like a hostess on a cruise ship, all smiles and photo-ready posture. I didn't blame her for how we were raised, but I didn't forget how many times she'd watched our parents berate me and said nothing. How she repeated their judgments when I left Dylan. How she once told me, you could have come home if you weren't so proud. She meant well, maybe. But sometimes, silence is a betrayal louder than words. I didn't approach her that day. I didn't want to sully her big moment. And besides, I had bigger things on my mind. By the time I got back to my hotel room, my phone was buzzing nonstop. Delia had called 3 times. I'd missed a few texts from our project manager, Fariha, and a dozen Slack messages with things like, check the second report. It's him. Confirmed. Ray. Holy crap. I sat down on the edge of the bed, kicked off my heels, and opened my laptop. Our system had finished sweeping the database associated with one of the biggest flag cases from beta. The IPs, the metadata, the obfuscation layers, it all led back to Trident Insights, a company based in Albany. It was one of 4 Curtis had investments in under his holding firm. He'd been harvesting behavioral data from users of a meditation and therapy app targeted at abuse survivors. The kind of data that should be protected under HIPAA-level standards. Worse, the app had never disclosed this. And people had trusted it, because it was marketed by influencers as safe space tech. Blackwell tore through it like fire through tissue paper. By the time I sat down with a glass of water, I had the entire flow of data on screen. Trident Insights was selling this information to 2 separate marketing firms and, get this, one of the largest private health insurers on the East Coast. You didn't even need imagination to know what they were doing with it. Curtis didn't just profit from exploitation. He engineered it. I dropped the full report into our secure leak queue. It was already scheduled. Once our third-party ethical partners reviewed and greenlit it, it would go live, public, timestamped, and sourced. It was 11:43 p.m. By 12:15 a.m., I had 3 reporters DMing me. By 1 a.m., Delia texted, "They're going to run it first thing in the morning." I slept soundly that night for the first time in weeks. The morning came with fireworks. At 8:17 a.m., Vice posted the first article. The title hit like a hammer: Mental health apps selling survivor data? New privacy tool exposes a quiet scandal. Within the hour, The Verge picked it up. Then Wired. Then Fast Company. They didn't name Curtis directly, but they didn't need to. A few clicks and public business records were enough for any mildly competent journalist or pissed off to connect the dots. By 11:30 a.m., Trident Insights was trending on X. Curtis called me at 12:08 p.m. I let it go to voicemail. He tried again. Then again. At 12:35 p.m., I got a text from Melody. "What did you do?" That made me pause. I tapped out a reply. Deleted it. Wrote it again. Deleted it again. Finally, I told the truth. "Your husband's best man knew, by the way. Ask him." She didn't reply. 2 hours later, Inez called. I hadn't told her the details of Blackwell, not really. But she knew something had shifted. "Are you okay, Nina?" she asked. "I am," I said. "They're not." "But I am." Inez paused. I heard her sip coffee through the receiver. "You know," she said slowly, "most people, when they're hurt, they try to disappear. You didn't disappear. You sharpened." That night, the floodgates opened. Emails. Screenshots. Whistleblowers. One of the former contractors from Trident Insights forwarded us internal memos that were, honestly, nauseating. Things like, victim behavior metrics can be leveraged for targeted ad placement during peak vulnerability periods. Crisis window targeting as a feature. Encouragement to avoid app transparency because users in trauma states typically do not read disclosures. This wasn't negligence. This was a weaponized violation. Curtis, of course, went silent. But his shell corp was named in 2 major investigative pieces by the end of the week. The FTC opened an inquiry. The startup's website was pulled down. And investors? They vanished like mist in the sun. As for my family? The wedding hangover hit hard. Apparently, Melody's new in-laws were less than thrilled. Her new husband's father had a sizable investment in a company Curtis was advising. When the news hit, he pulled out. The wedding photos weren't even posted yet when the screaming matches started. I didn't see it firsthand, but I heard about it from a cousin who wasn't completely horrible. Word was, Melody cried for 2 hours. Curtis blamed me, obviously. My mother didn't even text. She just posted some cryptic thing on Facebook about some people forgetting where they come from. Yeah. I remembered exactly where I came from. And I'd never let it happen to anyone else again. Inez came to visit the next weekend. We sat on my apartment balcony, watching the sunset over the Charles River. She looked at me the way she used to when I was just a broken thing with a notebook and a busted Chromebook. "You sure you're okay?" she asked again. "I didn't ruin them, Inez," I said. "I just stopped protecting them." She nodded, slow. "They don't know how to hurt someone who isn't afraid of them." "No," I said. "They really don't." I was quiet for a second. Then I added, "They're screaming now." "All of them." "Because they're exposed?" "No," I said, "because they're still trying to find someone else to blame." We both laughed. And in that laughter was something strange. Not joy. Not satisfied. But peace. For once, I wasn't surviving. I was living. A few days later, I started getting emails from strangers. Survivors, mostly. Women who had used the same app Curtis's company was harvesting from. Some had just begun therapy. Some had tried to report violations and been brushed off. Some had no idea anything was wrong until they read the article. One message hit me like a gut punch. It was from a woman named Yelena, a nurse in Pittsburgh. She said the app had started sending her targeted ads for weight loss supplements, antidepressants, and even fertility clinics, all after she logged a journal entry about body image and her struggles with IVF. I thought it was a coincidence, she wrote. Now I know it wasn't. I feel violated in ways I can't even explain. Thank you for building something to protect people like me. I sat with that email for an hour. Not because I was proud, but because I remembered being her. That stripped feeling. That quiet horror of realizing your most private pain was repackaged into marketing metrics. Curtis had taken something sacred and sold it like old furniture on Facebook Marketplace. Every day that week, new articles came out. Trident Insights collapsed within days. Curtis tried to deny involvement, but business records, IP logs, and investor ties buried him. And Blackwell's data trail? Immaculate. We'd made sure of it. Still, the louder the headlines got, the louder the whispers from my family became. They didn't reach out directly. Not yet. But I got passive-aggressive breadcrumbs. A cousin tagged me in a Facebook post that said, "Family is sacred. Don't bite the hand that fed you." Aunt Darla posted something about how some people think they're heroes for tearing others down. I didn't respond. Not because I didn't want to, but because I knew it wouldn't change anything. They weren't angry because I'd hurt them. They were angry because I stopped letting them hurt me. The only person who called was Melody. She phoned on a Thursday evening. I was eating soup on the couch, watching a documentary. When I saw her name, my stomach knotted. But I picked up. "Hi," she said. Her voice was tight, brittle. "Hey," I said. "How's married life?" A pause. "Then, you destroyed Curtis." "No," I said calmly. "He destroyed himself. I just let the light in. He's not eating. I don't know, Raylene. He's messed up." And Trent's parents, her voice cracked. They pulled out of our house deal. They think I was part of it. That I hid it. I said nothing. "Why didn't you tell me?" she asked. "Why didn't you warn me before everything exploded?" I took a deep breath. "Would you have believed me?" I asked. Another pause. "I don't know," she said quietly. "Maybe not." There it was. The honesty I'd waited years for. "I didn't do this to spite anyone," I told her. "I built something to protect people who get exploited while they're at their most vulnerable." Curtis was just arrogant enough to think he could operate in that space without consequences. "I didn't know," she said again, as if saying it enough might absolve her. "I know." "Are we okay?" she asked, her voice barely above a whisper. I looked out the window. Boston was glowing. A cold kind of glow. Autumn had arrived, and the trees were a blur of orange and red like the city was on fire. "I'm okay," I said. "I don't know about we." "Not yet." She cried. Not loudly. Just those quiet, breathless sobs you try to hold in when you know you're guilty but not sure of what, exactly. We ended the call on awkward terms, but I didn't feel hatred. Just distance. The kind that had always been there. We just stopped pretending to ignore it. Over the next 2 weeks, things got worse for Curtis. A state-level probe opened. Then federal. Turns out, some of the data he'd sold made its way into political strategy firms, targeting ads by manipulating trauma-based profiles. The kind of thing you hear about on the news and assume is overseas. He wasn't just greedy. He was dangerous. And still, my mother hadn't said a word. I found out through my cousin Eloise that Mom was telling people I had gone rogue and was always jealous of Curtis. That I'd hacked into his business and twisted the narrative. Sure. That's what happened. I could have proved otherwise. Screenshots, documentation, the legal paper trail. But I didn't need to. I'd already done what I set out to do. It wasn't about vengeance. It was about clarity. I was done playing dumb to keep the peace. Then came the final straw. Delia called me early one morning. Her voice was tight. "Check the press junket today," she said. "There's a new piece coming from a tech outlet." I opened the article. Exploiting the exploited, the corporate web behind Traumatecha's rise, and its fall. They'd named names. Curtis. The holding companies. Even Melody's husband, who'd quietly resigned from his own company 3 days prior. Public backlash was swift. I was scrolling through the article when I saw it. A quote from an anonymous source, likely an employee at Trident, who said, "The top brass always joked they were mining pain. It was their tagline in the office." I nearly vomited. You have to be a special kind of soulless to turn people's trauma into a punchline. That same day, our inbox flooded with inquiries from nonprofits and legal aid organizations. Everyone wanted to license Blackwell. We were still in early stage deployment, but demand was skyrocketing. Delia and I spent 12 hours on back-to-back Zoom calls. And somewhere, between talking to a refugee support group from Berlin and a domestic violence network in Arizona, I realized, this is what I was supposed to do. Not fix broken people, but build the shields they never had. The irony? I'd become the thing I always needed. And my family, the same ones who laughed at the Stinky shelter, who scoffed at my pain, were now drowning in the fire they set. Curtis tried to get ahead of it. He published a Medium post. Some hollow, "we never meant harm" nonsense with a close-up photo of him looking sad in a hoodie. It didn't land. The comments were a bloodbath. Melody deleted her socials for a while. Her friends were fighting in the comments, some defending her, others accusing her of complicity. She texted me again, saying, "This is all too much." I didn't reply. Aunt Darla emailed me a one-line message, "You could have handled this privately." And I wanted to scream. Because I had handled it privately. 4 years. Quietly. I'd swallowed every insult, every belittlement, every whispered joke about me being damaged or wasting my potential. But there's only so much swallowing you can do before you choke. And I wasn't choking anymore. A few days after Aunt Darla's email, I received an invitation. Not the paper kind, a digital one, classy and cold, to a family healing dinner at my mother's house. I read it twice. Healing? That word sat wrong with me. Like a band-aid on a bullet wound. The invite was passive-aggressively framed like a peace offering: let's reconnect, come together, and move forward with forgiveness and love. Translation: let's sweep this under the rug before the neighbors find out too much. I didn't RSVP. Instead, I waited. 3 days later, Melody messaged me. "Are you coming?" "No," I replied. She typed and stopped. Then typed again. "What do you want, Ray? What would make this right?" It was a genuine question. For once. I stared at the screen, then wrote, "Accountability. And not from me." The following week, the opportunity came, not from my family, but from an unexpected place, a mid-sized media group that hosted a documentary series called Inside the Web. Think Vice meets Frontline. They wanted to feature Blackwell. I was hesitant. I never liked the camera. I preferred to work in code, not lights. But Delia encouraged me. "You've done everything but speak your truth," she said. "Say it in your words." I agreed. We shot the segment over 4 days. They filmed inside Haven House. Inez cried on camera and made the producers cry too. They interviewed survivors who used our tools. They walked through how the system traced predatory patterns. And, with a reluctant heart, I gave them permission to include a visual map of the corporate data trail. Trident Insights sat at the center. And Curtis? Front and center with documentation. They aired it on Thursday night. The reaction was volcanic. The episode exploded on YouTube and streaming, over 1 million views within 24 hours. People were furious. Not just at Curtis or companies like his, but at how common this kind of exploitation had become. Politicians quoted it in speeches. Tech analysts dissected it. Survivors shared it like gospel. Curtis finally got what he always wanted: attention. Just not the kind he could profit from. His LinkedIn disappeared. His shell companies were being dismantled. Melody moved in with a friend in Connecticut. Their house deal fell through. Their reputation? Gone in digital ash. The real kicker came 2 weeks later. Curtis tried to spin the entire situation into a redemption tour. He hired a PR consultant and launched a website for a data ethics think tank, complete with a fake advisory board and a blurry mission statement. He posted about forgiveness culture and the dangers of canceling mobs. It backfired. Within 12 hours, Blackwell's Twitter account quote-tweeted him with just one line: "Apologies aren't strategies." Delia posted the verified documents showing he never once contacted us, offered to amend his behavior, or help the survivors affected. The timeline we provided made it clear he'd known about the issue for at least a year before we exposed it. Within a day, the site was taken offline. No one trusted him anymore. He wasn't cancelled. He was irrelevant. The final blow? We were approached by one of the mental health nonprofits that Curtis's app had harmed. They asked us to build a secure digital ecosystem from scratch, one that survivors could trust. A whole new app. Privacy first. Fully encrypted. Transparent. We accepted. Guess who used to have the contract for their tech services? Curtis. Now, we had it. I signed the agreement with a quiet kind of joy. Not revenge with fire. Revenge with precision. Last month, I got a letter from my mother. Yes, a real paper letter. Written in her slanted cursive on that expensive cream stationery she saved for holidays. It was an apology. Of sorts. She said she didn't realize how much she had failed me. That she thought she was doing the right thing by encouraging me to be stronger, though she admitted, finally, that it wasn't strength. It was controlled. Projection. She didn't ask for forgiveness. She asked for a chance to start over. I still haven't replied. Not because I'm angry. Not anymore. But because some fires burn so hot they change the ground. Even when the flames go out, the soil isn't the same. And I'm not the same. I live in Boston now. My apartment is quiet and filled with plants. Inez visits. Delia and I have offices in Cambridge. Our team has grown to 30. We mentor women in tech. We speak at schools. We still donate to Haven House every quarter, and we renamed our conference room after Inez. Curtis still lives in Hudson, last I heard. Back in my parents' basement. No job. No reputation. No more secrets. He messaged me once, just one line. You win. I didn't respond. Because it was never a game. It was survival. And I don't need to win anything anymore. I already did.